avoid separating children from the caregivers. If separation occurs, example hospitalization, ensure there is regular contact, example via phone, and reassurance. Need help and support? Please contact us at the hotline 311, psychosocial support at 722-6575 or 518-4157. Brought to you by PAHO, the OACS Commission, and UNICEF.
The opinions expressed on this TV program by the hosts, co-hosts, guests, and call-in listeners or chatters are solely the opinions and responsibility of the original source who expressed them. They do not necessarily represent the opinions of UTV or its affiliates.
Hello to all, sons and daughters, and all those who love this land that gave most of us birth. This is the Revolution. Special shout out to the folks locked in on Hits Radio 92.1 in the north, 91.1 in the south. For those of you locked in on YouTube, the growing presence, YouTube is UTV124, as well as Twitch, Instagram, and of course Facebook, welcoming all the hacks of the United Workers' Party. Please bring more. I see Ring the Bell coming. Make sure you can bring champagne. Bring everybody. So maybe some of your house slave mentality might just get a little bit more woke. But that said, I want to say, as it is Thursday, we always do shout-outs, April 15, 2021. But that said, folks, you need to try to get me the shout-outs before I physically come on air, because then I won't be able to read them in time. So what I'll do is, I got a whole set in the last 10 minutes that I was not able to include. So what I'll do is send your shout-outs again to 758-519-1818. And I will do shout-outs tomorrow as well. But the ones that I have for today, I still want to honor them. So I want to make sure to send a good afternoon to the great Mr. Weng, as well as the man Black Japanese. Shout-outs to the folks at T-Spot Bar in Viewfort. Thank you very much for locking in. Folks over at the Southern Taxi, good afternoon to you. Folks locked in from Touge and for our show. One thing we have to get right in St. Lucia, and it'll make itself more apparent. We have signs spelling Olio about 4 different ways. We have 2 Grand Rivières, we have 2 T. Rochers, we have all the rest of that. But some of the pronunciations, you know, is it for our show, full our show, you know? I don't know, but we'll get to all of those things. Soufre bus stand and Laclery bus stand. Also the folks down in Viewfort, there, New Dock Road. Shout outs to all of you. Happy birthday going out to the Night Rider himself, Russell Lake. Hoping you have a great one. Greetings coming from your son and daughters, and also from all the staff at Radio 100, and of course your fans and loyal listeners. Shout outs to Ophelia and her amazing mother Juanita, sisters Octavia and Tessa, and son Jean-Quan preparing for CXC. Folks, we realize that in some countries, they have had the presence, and this is not a St. Lucia thing alone, but the Caribbean still pushing ahead to have CXC. It reminds me of something Adrian Auger said. Are we just graduating people just to send them out of the system? Is that what we're doing? Because is there anybody that can deny how much the education system has been affected with regard to COVID? A pandemic that transcended everyone and everything economically, financially, and educationally. And really and truly, are we not doing a disservice by having forced CXCs and forced other exams? I mean, really and truly, what happens if those kids who did not get the full education were to get the full education? We already have people who have lost a year's worth of wages and counting. So think about that just in terms of an education deficit. What is the point of graduating people? Do you dumb down the exams? And if they pass that, then what if they still don't have the qualifications in the realest sense? Is there always going to be an asterisk by their name? Let's think about that. But nonetheless, shout outs to Empress Bobo, always locked in. And last but not least, shout outs to Mr. Cassius Elias. Just for clarity, the United Workers' Party has never won the Labrie seat. Even in the 79-82 elections, well, the elections of 1982, where Peter Josie, as leader of the St. Lucia Labour Party, led the Labour Party into its worst defeat, getting 2 seats, one of them as Labrie, and Labrie has always voted Labour. The closest it has come to swinging is when Neville Snack literally took the Labour Party's endorsed votes and walked across the floor to join Sir John, well, John Compton at the time, but of course Sir John, and disenfranchising all of the collective will and votes of the people of Labrie. But that doesn't count. And when he ran again on a UWP ticket, he was beaten by Velan John. Right? The illustrious one himself. Now, that said, in terms of on the other side, on the other coast, Miku North has never been won by the Labour Party, by a Labour Party candidate. Cassius Elias won Miku South in the famous elections of 16-1, that was the 1997 elections. Cassius Elias won Miku South. Abel Wilson was the one who ran for Miku North. He was unsuccessful, late father of Silas Wilson. And we can get into all of the back and forth over whether the campaign manager messed up this and that and the other. But the bottom line is that Louis George is the one and the 16-1. What is amazing, though, is to see how Louis George lived his life, continued to live with dignity, even as Stephenson King and the rest of the Labour Party abandoned him in his final years, especially when he needed help with his medical condition, having his legs amputated and having the debts, even though he did have a pension. And he never cried, he never begged. And you look at Gail Rigobert, who literally is filming from her Zara villa. She doesn't even go to Castries to go to work. She literally stays in one of her 2 $1.3 million villas. And yet still, you have somebody who represented Miku so proudly. Whether you like UWP or not, or like Louis George or not, you have to give the man his due respect. And at the end of it all, just imagine the difference between Louis George and Gail Rigobert. And then, when we want to talk about Jeremiah Norbert, maybe there's a case to be made. That said, folks, where do we start? Well, you know, I notice these days the new thing is to just, first of all of the UWP MPs in the House had certain talking points that they were given that they had to inculcate in their speeches. So one of them is the new thing of saying, if you repeat something enough, it becomes the truth or whatever. Well, y'all are being bitten by the same snake that y'all unleashed by repeating falsehoods literally for generations now, literally for decades, so that hopefully they will become facts. Up to now, y'all repeating Grindberg, even though Rick Wayne himself admitted that his own lawyer friends told him that he kept quoting pre-independence law. But that's okay. And even though he went from 7 billion to 7 million miles of square miles of seabed, then nobody wants to explain how Shastney can be looking to put 23 islands off the coast of Il Pirata, how Sandals has their over-the-water bungalows and other stuff. No, and the causeway that I think Teo King wanted to build, if that were true in terms of the Grindberg thing, but it's okay, it's all right. The fact of the matter is that the big lie now is to say that Shastney is a visionary. Look, if you watch Miami Vice in the 80s and you take that to be your standard, all Shastney's ideas come from the 80s, and they are gleaned ideas. In other words, he's seen things like he go to Dubai, so he want Dubai and the Middle East there, they built artificial islands to simulate the Caribbean. So Shastney in his brilliance telling us that he wants to build 23 islands and a Marlin-shaped island so that we can have islands to simulate what Dubai is simulating, which is us already being islands. And you call that vision? Literally running on the vision of Sir John, who passed 10 years before Chasney was at that convention saying that they're going to follow the vision plan of Sir John, which is not a vision plan. It was a quadrant plan developed by many people, not only the, people like Neville Skeet and the permanent secretaries and Osbert Dove and a number of people, technocrats and professionals in St. Lucia. But the bottom line is what? It was a physical infrastructure plan. It was not a vision plan. Chasney, as we can see, has been socialized as an elitist. So if you tell me that what he's looking for is to build a bourgeois enclave, that's not a vision, that's a sinister ulterior motive. To take a country and to look to bring in high net worth individuals while you get shares in their companies, you have private interests in their golf courses and their labs and their call centers and all the rest of that. You take all the best land for yourself and your family, you divest the government of any social responsibilities while you have people in the private sector that are your family to take up those same things, whether it's fisheries, whether it's meat imports, whether it's agro-processing, purchasing, and everything else. That's not a vision. That's ulterior motive. That's conflict of interest. But what's even worse, today, all of a sudden now, there's no more COVID. Eh? You notice? The deaths, if they come 2 a day, 1 here, this, that, there, no more COVID. We're getting to have about 24 to 26,000 people vaccinated. That is what the total will be, because we're not sure when we get in the next COVAX shipment. We have 12,000 people plus, well, 20,000 people that we have to give a second shot, which will leave us with about 12,000 doses left. So that's about 6,000 people that can get first and second shots. Folks, that is 1/6 of our entire population of just under 180,000 people. So we're not out of the woods yet. But this government is fantastic at just allowing things to be forgotten and pushing it to the back of your mind, like DSH and the failure of the horse race track. So what they do now, because they are in full campaign mode, while you've seen people getting beaten up, roughed up underneath JQ Mall for not wearing a mask, today again Chasney is not wearing a mask for our show. And they're in election mode. So now in election mode, I guarantee you, remember I said it, by the 14th, today's the 15th, by the 15th of next month, you will see them lift the state of emergency. They will tell you the numbers are trending. They never give you a target to say we want to reach down to 50 or down to whatever, 100 or 1,000 or whatever. They never give you a target so you can demotivate them when they don't reach the target. They just say the numbers are trending downwards. So we lift in the state of emergency because we have to bathe the country in campaign money. We've starved the people long enough so that we will bathe them in campaign money. $20 million, $30 million of money that they stole. Money that they took for themselves, money that they pumped through. IMF money that they took that was supposed to go to income support and relief, and they will take it and try to buy you with it. But always remember, even if they offer you $1,000, take it. It's your money. Even if they offer you contracts and they tell you you only get paid if you vote for UWP, that's Papi Show, because the contract has to be honored no matter who is in there. That's the whole point of a contract. $1,000 is only 54 cents a day. So you have to ask yourself, people ignore you for 4 years, and in the last 6 months, they all of a sudden care about you. If you vote for them again, what precedent does that set? That tells them that what they did was right. And then they'll be able to ignore you for the next 4 years and then come back and do the same thing. You have to put a stop to it. No matter who is the one doing it, you have to put a stop to it. Now that said, right now, we already had record unemployment before COVID. We have record unemployment because of COVID, compounded by this government's misplaced priorities. So the question is, in all of this, if Chasney is such a visionary, why is it that he has never espoused any kind of medium-term plan? Because while we're not out of the woods yet, yes, a year is beyond short-term, but just barely, the fact of the matter is there are still thousands of St. Lucians out of work. And what is there for them?
We have some short-term measures that were implemented to kind of ease the pain of this crisis. So the NIC initially came out with the employment relief program that's been extended to the 6 months. There is a income support program coming from central government. There's all sorts of different programs. Looking at the world, I do not see that in 6 months we will be back to normal functioning. So what is the government's perspective? What is your strategy for when these programs run out? How do we take care of people who may still be without a job, either on layoff or made redundant? You know, there's a lot now of excess capacity in our workforce, idled people that still have bills to pay, still have rent to make, and so on. So in the medium term, what are we going to do about this?
Great question. The analogy that I liked the most when this first happened was an economist called Paul Krugman, who is a Nobel laureate economist. And he said the world has gone into an induced coma. And it's a great analogy. So why do we put a person into an induced coma? It's because they have a brain hemorrhage or some kind of problem. We're concerned that the damage that will happen to the rest of the organs of the body while we're trying to treat that specific problem. So what they do is they put the person into a coma to be able to protect the rest of the body, focus on what the problem is, and then now once that problem is done, take the person off of life support at that point to determine whether in fact all the other organs were saved. Okay, and then you start now building back. So now you can be a bit more specific because the life threat is not there. So if all of a sudden there's a kidney malfunction because of that, they now know how they can deal with the kidney malfunction. But the person is now not out of critical care, but certainly much more of a stabilized and a much more manageable situation.
So in the meantime, what
Yes.
are the interventions?
So the interventions are construction and the call centers. So between the substantial increase in construction, absorbing manpower, the call centers, we added 1,300 new jobs. We announced 1,300 jobs over the next 4 months. And 2 of the call centers have since contacted us and are working with the CMO on the protocols that they can even bring more.
There you go. You won't diversify the economy, even in the middle of tourism being in flux and not predicted to recover to any kind of level of normalcy until the year 2023. You have record unemployment. And all you can say is construction, for which you took the money that should have gone to income support and you put it in construction projects with all of your cronies that are going to take for themselves and take for you and take for you to also go back and try to buy people's votes in the campaign. And then you're talking about call centers. Everything is a call center, call center. And don't you love the big numbers when they tell you call center is going to hire 500, they're going to hire 1,000, they're going to hire 1,000 too. But they don't tell you a lot of the other parts where the same call centers, when they fire, they don't fire 5 or 10. They fire 300, 400, 500. They don't tell you about the in-work poverty that a lot of these people in the call centers are going through and the psychological effects of working in a call center. But we'll get to that because, hey, of course, you remember ITEL BPO?
ITEL BPO's opening reaffirms the advent of a new beginning for Viewfort.
Some have argued that ITEL BPO's job fair was misleading as people only dropped off their CVs when they could have applied online.
Yep, hundreds of young people misled into believing that they were going to be interviewed for jobs at ITEL BPO, when indeed Invest St. Lucia, yes, Pinkley, tell me I'm lying, and I'll send you the screenshots as well for that one, right? That y'all made a decision to mislead the people, to have them come down because you wanted a big show for Shasney to make him look good, that hundreds of young St. Lucians were going to be employed. And instead, what ended up happening was they were given a pencil, paper, a little Invest St. Lucia pamphlet, like a little mini booklet, about 3-4 pages, and they were given a tour of the facilities. But what is even more curious than to have young people who were desperate for employment under the Shasney administration was not only that they had to waste their precious resources and stand in the sun from 6 in the morning till 3-4 in the afternoon. What is even worse than that is to know that we paid for the building. We don't know how much we paid for the refurbishment of the building to ITEL BPO's specifications. And what's even worse, we don't know the terms in terms of how much of the staff are we paying, like Ojo, how much of the staff, what amount are we paying, and for how long. Because up to now, for the first year, we were paying $1,000 to the first 200 or 100 staff of Ojo, and then $500 to the next, all the rest that come after that first 100. They would get $500 indefinitely. And even during COVID, in the COVID budget, and again this time, for 2 years, while we cannot come up with unemployment benefits for the young people, the not so young, all of the small businesses that have been closed, we're telling them they can go to SLDB and take a loan. Who in their right mind will take a loan in such an uncertain time, not knowing whether they'll have any ability to pay it back? But what's even worse is you have a budget, 2 budget cycles where they are pumping, they are paying the salaries for these companies, and they're refurbishing the buildings. And you know the worst part? Bradley Felix actually boasting about the free zone being for the first time full. But what they're not telling you is that the money that they spend refurbishing Ojo Labs and ITEL BPO's 2 buildings now is in the same area of the airport expansion, for which they're borrowing $600 million from the Taiwanese. So all what they're building with your taxpayers' money has to be knocked down. But now, let us see the nice puff piece from just the 13th, just a day or two ago. Because not only did Shasney and the rest of them pay for the refurbishment of the first building, they paid for the refurbishment and the establishment of a second building open day before.
The Flobo government is not for poor people. They're not.
How so?
Because they don't look out for poor people. Those who have already, that are those they are looking for.
Several months later.
ITEL BPO is expanding its local operations with a new site at the Viewfort Free Zone, which is expected to house some 350 employees. The business processing outsourcing company launched its operations here in July 2020, initially with 30 employees, but has since maximized its operations to over 400 workers. Though the support of Invest St. Lucia has been instrumental in the company's decision to expand, ITEL BPO's CEO Yoni Epstein has credited the company's local team members for being the main reason it decided to continue investing in the island.
ITEL has seen tremendous support from our team members in St. Lucia. We've seen, record low attrition rates, record low absenteeism rates, record high KPI results to our clients that are operating out of St. Lucia today. And as good or better than some of our other jurisdictions that also support these clients. So we are overjoyed and thrilled as to the levels of production, the loyalty, the support and the skill that we're seeing out of our team members in St. Lucia.
Invest St. Lucia CEO Roderick Cherry observed that the BPO sector is growing at a high rate while other industries are declining. The expansion of ITEL BPO's local operations, he says, augurs well for the island's economy.
What does this mean for the people of St. Lucia and the economy of St. Lucia? Well, 450 jobs were created by ITEL BPO in 2020, and they have now committed to creating another 350 jobs in 2021. Bear in mind, this is not just call center jobs, but these jobs will evolve into high-tech vocations and other valuable transferable skills. It is noteworthy that 20 local contractors were employed during the construction period of these two facilities, creating approximately 250 construction jobs during the COVID-19 pandemic. During this time of uncertainty, while our region's most significant economic driver, tourism, is at an all-time low, and some businesses have shut down and we have rising unemployment rates, ISL continues to explore avenues to create economic growth for the nation.
ITEL BPO is not stopping there and plans to expand even further to occupy an additional 31,000 square feet of space in the Vieux Free Zone, with the ultimate goal of having a staff complement of 1,200 full-time employees by the end of this year.
Doesn't that sound fantastic? 1,200 employees. But they don't tell you a lot of things. Now, nobody's saying that you can't have call centers. Call centers are not a bad thing. It's about the details, the terms and conditions. However, there are things that we need to be mindful of. The young people that go predominantly to go and work in these call centers, right? The kind of hours that they work. When you hear Epstein boasting about this, that, and the other, it's because they were making them work all the way through COVID. All the time you hear in curfew that you have to be at your home for 9 o'clock, and Easter weekend you have to be home for 3 o'clock. They're making them work up until 1 in the morning, but they don't tell you that. And the bus is not taking all of them all the way to their home. So a lot of them are stranded because there's no services in a time when there's curfews. They don't tell you that. They don't tell you about the psychological effects. Just imagine trying to call each day 300 people. Some of these call centers, they call 300 people to try to get them to take an offer or to make a call back. So you get what is called a demo. So imagine you call 300 people, and each time people cursing you, they tell you they don't have time for you, they reject you, they reject you, they reject you. Imagine each day going through 300 rejections in order to get 1 or 2 people as demos that you can call back another day to see if you can sell them on something. There are a lot of psychological effects to that, but people have to pretend, because at the end of the day, nobody said that jobs don't come with certain drawbacks and stuff like that, but we're not estimating properly how demoralizing these things are for a lot of young people. And why is it that all of the jobs that the Prime Minister seems to believe that St. Lucians deserve for their children are all servile position, ass-kissing jobs? It's either you're working in a kitchen, you are maid, fixing up and housekeeping, even though you put your life at risk with COVID, or you're working in a call center. And I say it again to all government ministers, anything you don't want for your child, why are you giving it to everybody else? Doesn't make sense to me. But then here's the problem. Everything Shasney does has the links, the ulterior motives. You all don't know, just like how Shasney is always gracious to anything Sandals wants, that Yoni Epstein is a Sandals executive, Sandals guy. So once again, a friend, family, or foreigner, or link that Shasney has is getting all of our resources pumped to him. We're propping up his business, just like we're doing for all the other friends, family, and foreigners. Propping up his business. So I want to show you 2 things. One, let's show the article. I've shown it before. When they came to build the first one, citing enormous pipeline of opportunity, ITEL BPO expands into St. Lucia. Let's show the second page. Yoni Epstein, same guy you saw in the story from the 13th of April, founder and CEO of ITEL BPO, said today that 75% of their operations are based in Jamaica. Expanding operations to St. Lucia also fits well into the company's contingency plan. Today, 75% of our operations are based in Jamaica. We don't want to become over-dependent on one country, Yoni Epstein, the founding chairman and CEO of ITEL BPO, said to Nearshore Americas. The investment promotion agency would build the facility in accordance with the design approved by us. Epstein added, refusing to disclose how much money the new delivery center would cost. Who is the investment agency? Invest St. Lucia. We, the people of St. Lucia, have now built 2 buildings, retrofitted 2 buildings to ITEL BPO specifications. We, the people of St. Lucia, do not know the total, although I am reliably informed it's about $7 million. You'll hear Roddy Sherry Cheryl come and tell you 20 contractors, but we paid them. So it wasn't Mr. Epstein that hired them, we paid them. But folks, let me ask you a question. If I could start a business in a country, I get all the concessions, just like Ojo Labs, I get to bring down my private yacht and all the rest of that. You paid my staff. I have nothing tying me to stay in St. Lucia. Nothing, because we all know Ojo is waiting for after elections for them to go over to Grenada. But that's okay. You can get to come here. I build in buildings for you. I retrofit in buildings for you. I pay your staff for you. You get to keep all your profits. The people of St. Lucia have no equity stake or share in the business, and the government does not even give the information about what it spent on my company to anybody. But who would not take that? Because right now, Ojo Labs has nothing tying it to St. Lucia. Neither does ITEL BPO. And the worst part is, there have been call centers before, KM2, KM squared, any which way you want to put it. Now KM squared has the government by the balls now, because all these concessions and everything that they've given to ITEL, BPO and Ojo Labs, they now have to they have to almost like backfill, backdate. They have to now go and give KM2, KM squared, all kinds of help and all kinds of stuff. But KM squared never got any of these incentives that Shastney and them given. None. And not only did they build here, establish here, they expanded to 6 countries, including Grenada and Puerto Rico, and they even came back and have a second location in St. Lucia, all without ever having those same incentives, if you want to be nice about it, that what you see Roderick and all of them doing backflips over at Invest St. Lucia to bring. So what are we doing? Are these investors? Are these investors? Or are we paying people to take advantage of us? It doesn't make sense. And then you'll hear about which minister and which official in which parastatal agency have vehicles renting for them, or which one have his house being rented, which one using the computer systems from this one private company and that and the other. And when you put it out, they'll tell you all kind of stuff. But folks, all I will tell you is, when they hire in and you hear they hire in 500, when they fire in the same 500. And don't take my word for it. Speak to the young people in the call centers, and they'll tell you what the experience is. Oh, there's a salad bar, and we can play table tennis, and we can this, that, and the other. Wages aren't that great. The hours are long, and then they tell you the same thing. But I'm just happy to have a job. So once again, Shastney starves you, doesn't provide any platform of opportunity or enable environment, and then you have to be happy for the scraps from the master's table.
A former call center employee is warning young people to be mindful after she says she was suddenly and inexplicably terminated well before the end of her probation period. She asserts that several of her former colleagues also suffered a similar fate. According to the young woman, she was employed at a call center in the south of the island on a 1-year contract and was told that she would be subject to a 6-month probation period, after which point she would undergo an evaluation to determine the continuation of her employment at the company. However, she says she was shocked to learn that she was suddenly out of a job without what she considers a valid explanation.
They go about hiring lots of people, and you actually get fired in the same breath, right? Within a few months, you get fired. And then the reason for that being, you're told that you're not, it's like you're not with company. And also they do say that your performance is actually being and then it's like if you do not meet company's goal or company's requirements, then they just lay you off like that. And I think it's unfair because if someone's contract is a year, I believe you need to give that person a year. Or if you don't want to give that person a year, you stick to the 6 months probation. And it's sad that the 6 months wasn't even up yet.
While recruitment drives for such companies usually attract hundreds of eager young people, the former employee says the opportunity may not be as attractive as it seems.
It is sad because, most persons, you have no call center experience, right? Persons like myself and lots of persons that have been employed, we do not have call center experience. So in order for that person to become a better CER, which they consider us, you need to give that person some time. That person won't be perfect in a matter of in 2 months. I'm supposed to move up a tier in months. As soon as possible. You need to. If you cannot move up a tier, boom, they get rid of you. They don't give you time. They don't give you time. They don't give you time to actually learn. They don't give you time. You get written warnings for like the simplest things. You don't even get a verbal warning. I know in order to get a written warning, there needs to be a verbal warning. No, with that company, it's not.
While the individual says she has been coping well, she claims that several of her former colleagues have suffered abrupt terminations which have resulted in significant financial and mental implications.
I just believe that it's just really sad, and I think the youth out there, everybody should know about this job. Everybody should know about it because the way they just go about laying people off and just terminating out of the blue. And this, there is this friend of mine actually had a nervous breakdown because you've been given a contract and you're being told that it's going to be for a certain period of time. And the message I'm putting out there, I just want persons to know that this job, as much as it may sound exciting, it is not secure. This is not a secure job. It is not secure. And one message I also have out there to persons that are applying, do not try your best. Do not go into any debt. Do not take anything on hire purchase. Just don't do it.
The individual acknowledged that while the experience is valuable, she believes that the company should be more respectful towards local employees.
The experience was great. It is a great experience. But I just believe that we are treated like trash. We are treated like trash. And it's sad that this company is a US-1 company. Those Americans, I highly doubt that they actually get treated like that. And nobody wants to speak out. Nobody wants to say anything. You just get terminated and that's it. No one says nothing about it. And they hire lots of people and they fire you in the same breath.
Locally, the majority of call center employees are not represented by trade unions. Reporting for Choice News Now, I am Amani Mathre.
Available at Red Dot in Grosile and Susie's Varieties in Bois de Wange and Vieux Fort.
Hey girl, what's your name? What's your name? Hey,
you're in a good mood.
Girl, if I tell you, I just pre-registered for the COVID vaccine. Hey, but yes.
Supporting you in getting vaccinated is important to us at the Ministry of Health. By selecting one of the options for pre-registering, it helps us to be better prepared and more efficient at managing your demand for vaccination. There are 3 ways to pre-register for your COVID-19 vaccine. 1. Go online by visiting https://hmi.govt.lc/. 2. contact your closest wellness center. Or 3, contact your private physician. When we get vaccinated, we don't only protect our health, we are taking action that benefits the health of our entire nation. Vaccinate for you, for yours, for us. A message brought to you by the Ministry of Health and Wellness.
Why was the vaccine produced so quickly? There are concerns that the vaccine was rushed, but there are reasons why the vaccine was produced so quickly. There was collaboration with labs, there was financing from both public and private, and the gene sequence, which is key to producing the vaccine, was known from very early. Safety is also a priority, and there were assessments done both at animal and human phases. The WHO has very rigorous standards, and all these have been passed. If the WHO accepts a vaccine, it is safe.
This is a message from the St. Lucia Medical and Dental Association.
Hold on, it's your boy named Cripple Deeple doing this one for UTV, television for you. Check it out.
Mr. Speaker, no indictment of the Prime Minister can take place without focusing on his penchant to tell tales. Shameless, bold-faced, and unrepentant. In the interest of time, Mr. Speaker, I ask you to consider my favorite top 10 tales told by the Prime Minister. 1. At the 12th June 2016 UWP Victory Rally, the Prime Minister would flash a piece of paper and declare that his first order of business is to sign this memo, and I quote, "When I sign is that the gas prices will now be coming back down for you, the people of this country." The truth, Mr. Speaker, gas went up on that occasion and has never come down. 2. In an interview with the Nation newspaper in Barbados on 11th July 2016, the Prime Minister said the US had deported 800 people to St. Lucia. He was asked by the reporter in disbelief, 800? He said, correct. The truth? So disturbed was the US government that the US Embassy released a press statement on 4th July 2016 indicating that the total number of deportees returning to St. Lucia in the last 5 years was less than 100. In 2015, there were only 8 such cases. Number 3, the Prime Minister says that he had never met Theo Akin before July 2016. The truth? He had photos posted on his Facebook page on June 14th with Theo Akin. Number 4.
Mr. Speaker, again, if we're going to tell stories and we want to be truthful, this is a very serious matter. I only met Theo Akin for the first time in my life in June of 2016, and I would challenge the member on the other side to show any picture with me with Joe Akin in 2015. So I would like him to withdraw that erroneous statement.
Can I repeat what I said, Mr. Speaker? What? So wrong, you shall. The Prime Minister said that he had never met Theo Akin before July 2016. Exactly. The truth, he had photos posted on his Facebook page on June 13th, 2016 with Theo Akin. That's what I said. That's what I said? Remember the grenade and the gas price with JJ?
Honorable member.
Number 4, Mr. Speaker. The Prime Minister would announce at a September 19th, 2016 press conference that we have over 4,000 case backlog. The truth? The Chief Justice at the opening of the law year would declare that, and I quote, our current data shows over 1,000 in criminal cases still pending. That was the Chief Justice. Who do we listen to? Number 5. On 7 December 2016, the Prime Minister, whilst a guest on 21 questions, stated emphatically that there was no confidentiality clause in the DSH Framework Agreement. The truth? Clause 19 of the agreement is a confidentiality clause. 6. On November 22nd, 2018, The Prime Minister, in an interview outside of Parliament, in response to an interviewer question about $1.5 billion or so which he had announced for investment in St. Lucia, the Prime Minister would reply, "I have never said so." The truth? On November 26, 2017, on Rick Wynn's show, the Prime Minister indicated that he had already committed $1.2 billion in investment for St. Lucia and that the projects would have started in January 2018, 1 year ago. Number 7, in August 2018, speaking on the proposed Border Control Agency, the Prime Minister would state that he had no knowledge where the idea of a statutory body came from. The truth? A government press release on 14 September 2018 stated that Cabinet with immediate effect was revoking Cabinet Conclusion 247 of 16 April 2018, which had stated that the Border Control Agency would have been a statutory body. Number 8, in Parliament on 14 February 2018, the Prime Minister said that he had never seen one plan that proposed to connect a causeway to Maria Islands. The truth? Extensive coverage of the unveiling of Phase 2 of the DSH at Sandals Grand on 18 April 2017 showed the Prime Minister starring with Theo Akin. Number 9, the Prime Minister informed, and I love this one, the Prime Minister informed this Parliament that it was the Labour Party that bought the abandoned Daher Mall in Bois d'Orange. He says truth. Can I play the clip? I don't know that. Okay. The truth. A news report, the Prime Minister says that's true, you know. A news report was carried by HTS on August 4th, 2009. Clearly states that Dr. Anthony was always against the purchase of the mall. The Prime Minister is quoted as saying, and I quote, Dr. Anthony is playing cheap politics by not supporting the purchase of the building. Furthermore, he says, government has a plan for paying the building, for the building to pay itself. That's what the Prime Minister said. Even here today, he's saying that it is true that it's Kenny Anthony that bought the mall. And number 10, let me tell you, this is very Trumpian in behavior. Number 10, the last one, because time is running out. During his New Year address for 2019, the Prime Minister stated that, and I quote, banana exports are at their highest in several years. The truth? A Win Fresh press release of 14th December 2018, a couple of weeks before, stated the outlook for St. Lucia's bananas on the United Kingdom market does not look promising for 2019. Demands for St. Lucia by key customers in the UK have been significantly reduced from about 15,000 cases per week in 2018 to about 6,000 cases per week for 2019. Mr. Speaker, I put it to you. You want me to repeat it? I'll repeat it for you. During his address in January 2019, the Prime Minister said that the banana export at its highest in several years to the UK. Winfresh, in a release of 14th December 2018, stated demands for St. Lucia bananas from key customers in the UK have been significantly reduced from about 15,000 cases per week in 2018 to about 6,000 cases per week for 2019. This for so, Mr. Speaker, in January you're telling us our exports are at its highest in years, and yet Winfresh is saying it does not look promising. It is declining from 15,000 cases to 6,000 cases. And you're telling me that means an improvement. Mr. Speaker, I put it to you that the Prime Minister is guilty of repeatedly misleading the nation and Parliament, telling tales with no regard for his consequences. The people cannot trust his word or his intention. In closing, Mr. Speaker, I submit that politics, Mr. Speaker, is among the most vilified professions in the world, simply because many politicians fail to meet the expectations of the people who voted for them. All of us in this honorable House know only too well the demoralization we feel, especially when we are criticized for the expectations of our supporters, when we are criticized for the things we did not promise, but which people expect us to deliver anyway. Today, St. Lucians are angry with this Prime Minister because they expected him to deliver on certain basic promises he made. Ou promet si ou epilet, de sa nou jwen se sito ekpiman.
And you see, the sad reality is that while Shasney laughs at being exposed in terms of his lies, while he's still trying to lie about the lies that he's told being exposed, and people like me have been sending out clips and playing these things all the time, the worst part about it is that cavalier, callous attitude is what has us in this mess. Because his lies have consequences for farmers, for fishers. People make decisions based on their trust of government information. So when you cannot trust the government on basic things, then what happens with your business? What happens with your bar? What happens with your small business? What happens when you just find out in a sneaky way that your hairdressing salon, you now have to pay a license fee? Or if you're an auto mechanic, you have to pay a license fee. And if people like me didn't find out these things all now, so you wouldn't know, it would just be coming on you. What happens when you cannot trust a government? When a government in the middle of a time when you literally need food would take 3-4 loans for the refurbishment of the Victoria Hospital. 3 or 4 loans for the same thing and still not spend the money on it.
Conversion of the Victoria Hospital to a dedicated respiratory hospital, $4.1 million. Now let's go to, now this was prepared as the national plan. So the projection was that we spend $4.1 million. And I guess when you go to page 3 of the report, retrofitting of health facilities, $550,000. Now, we're saying to the end of September, despite all our borrowing, previous borrowing, the 77 million from the IMF, part of which will be used for election projects, a plan identified that we need $4.1 million to convert VH, but we, according to this limited document, would have spent $500,000. So what happened to the IMF money? What happened to the other monies that we've borrowed? Why couldn't we achieve what was in the plan, Mr. Speaker? Why couldn't we achieve it? Why should there be a video being circulated, Mr. Speaker, about the conditions that COVID patients have to be in right now at the same Victoria Hospital that a plan identified that we needed $4.1 million for? Why, Mr. Speaker? And we are asked to borrow even more, Mr. Speaker. I can go on. Let me give you a couple others. It says establishment of quarantine facilities, $2.6 million. I'm not aware of any quarantine facility that was established. Instead, we have accommodation for persons in quarantine and isolation centers, $4.6 million. Mr. Speaker, Cuban doctors, it says $3.3 million. This report says $888,000, Mr. Speaker. And I want to understand, Mr. Speaker, if we are borrowing monies over and over, and there is a plan that says what the money is supposed to be spent on, Mr. Speaker, why is it the report is not showing that the money was spent on those initiatives, Mr. Speaker? And we've been asked to approve even more borrowing, Mr. Speaker.
At least you can see why Sir Michael Shasney has so much venom spewing about Hilaire, and why Alan Shasney and him, their major goal is to get rid of Ernest Hilaire in Castries South. Even today, Shasney is in for our show. Incredible. But then again, it's not that difficult when you just look at the figures and compare them to Shasney's bullshit to see that they're just bold-faced lies.
We facilitated the initial transition of the OKEU hospital. We facilitated the conversion of the Victoria Hospital into a respiratory clinic. During the new financial year, Mr. Speaker, we will witness several critical milestones in our efforts to significantly enhance the quality of our healthcare infrastructure. OKU Hospital will be fully transitioned and the St. Jude Hospital will be completed.
We're in the middle of a pandemic, and there have been so many calls from the St. Lucia Labour Party that the government need to prioritize the needs to fight the COVID, fight the virus and manage it. And in the budget, the first thing you would run to look for is what's the allocation for COVID response. And under the Ministry of Health, you will see, and I think it is page 469.
Oh, we
you will see, 469. You will see an allocation of about $31 million for COVID response. And in there, you will see the breakdown that will show you how much for supplies and materials and whatever else. But in there is also, in that 31 million, almost $10 million is for consulting services. Just think about that. And I wish somebody could have explained that to us in the House. And when I spoke, I asked for an explanation. If you provide $31+ million for your COVID response under the Ministry of Health, almost 10 million is consulting services. What's that all about? Who's that for? Almost 1/3 of the monies provided for in the budget under the Ministry of Health for the COVID response is for consulting services. I'm not sure who that money is going to. If I had seen $10 million for vaccines and the stationery and materials, whatever, I would say, well, yeah, the government is making a concerted effort to get vaccines to make sure as many solutions as possible get vaccines and we achieve herd immunity. I have not seen that. The substantial part of the money is for, consulting services. And you really have to wonder what is involved in this COVID response that's provided for in the estimates. What's involved in it? Another thing which really struck me, and I was very quick to go and look for it. This government has been the great deceiver when it comes to the OKEO hospital. Well, I mean, I'm being generous when I say they have been deceivers, because they're probably a little worse than that. Because they were criticizing the Labour Party for not commissioning the OKEO, that they named it, and then they just left it at that. That's what they said. This United Workers' Party government has been in power for a longer period than Kenya Anthony Labour Party was in power between 2011 and 2016. Let me repeat that again. Huh? Between 2011 and 2016, Labour Party was in power for 4 years, 6 months. This government has been in power for 4 years and 8 months, going on to 9 months already. Well, almost 9 months, 4 years. So they've been in power longer. But they boasted everywhere that they commissioned OKEO. So of course I open the estimates and I try to go through every page in it. I get obsessed when I see figures like this. And I'm looking for how much does it cost St. Lucia to manage and operate OKEO? And I'm saying, wait, the substantial allocation is still in the Victoria Hospital. And I'm saying that cannot be, because Victoria Hospital is now a respiratory hospital. So I expect Victoria Hospital to be under the COVID response allocation. And you've seen a substantial part of money is still for Victoria Hospital. So in effect, you know what they've done? They just took the patients from Victoria Hospital and moved them to the physical plant at OKEO. So they can use Victoria Hospital as a respiratory hospital. But OKEO is still run as Victoria Hospital.
La vaccine COVID-19 Saint-Lucie, ekse pou moun ki an l'âge 18 l'année et moutan, moun ki ka travay an département santé ki wiskab, dokter, nos, polis, pompier, moun ki ni pisadou, kanser, batman chè, presha, l'oppression, epi moun ki an l'âge 65 l'année et moutan. Ou pa ni pou paye pou la vaccine, epi yo pa ka oblige ou point. Registrasyon sa fèt online an tout health center ek epi dokter privé. Vacciner pour vous, pour ça ou, et puis pour nous.
Thanks for tuning in to your favorite content creator, UTV.
To find out more, follow us on our social media platforms: YouTube UTV124, Facebook UTV124, Instagram UTV124, Twitch UTV124, TikTok UTV_124, and Flow TV channel 124. Remember, UTV, TV for you.
The following is a paid political announcement.
The project that we're doing in Gros Lake, we call it T-Village, which is next to the fire station, where we've taken that land, subdivided it, put water, electricity in it, sidewalks, designed it out now for small businesses, because that's really what that is. We had 33 lots available, over 300 people applied. All right? And you're seeing all around the country people now moving into new businesses. And I want to make sure that we don't frustrate those persons and that the government is moving in tandem with a lot of those persons in making sure that there are resources available to them.
This UWP administration won the 2016 general elections on June 6, 2016. In 7 weeks' time, June 6, 2021, 5 years will elapse. I was hoping, Mr. Speaker, that the Prime Minister would save St. Lucia all of what I consider to be showboating, the drama, the misdirections, and further suffering by actually calling the elections. But instead, Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister presented a budget a mere 7 weeks before the 5-year period ends, with the same, what I consider to be arrogance, which he governed. Take it, and I will still take more time. I believe his aim is to try to achieve what he did not achieve in 5 years in some 3 months, which he imagines may happen because the Constitution allows it. Mr. Speaker, I address this budget debate, and I'm thinking, looks like he wants to take probably the same 2 years which he set up the COVID-19 laws for. Mr. Speaker, our St. Lucia today is a story of a country which in my view has been crucified on a factory called the New St. Lucia, where its limbs, Mr. Speaker, our institutions, have been broken and split apart for plunder. I believe, Mr. Speaker, that this New St. Lucia is a place today where our resources, like the blood, flow out to foreign connections. This New St. Lucia, Mr. Speaker, where pieces of sharpened wood, in Creole we call them jukbois, pierce our people's feet daily. Mr. Speaker, where insults and demeaning, derogatory statements are made about our people in their faces, sweating from exhaustion, mendicants, barking dogs and jackasses, 5 years after, Mr. Speaker, the main organs of our self-respect, our sovereignty, our St. Lucianhood have been ripped by their friends, family, and foreigners. And the Prime Minister presents a budget pleading with St. Lucians to, in my view, Mr. Speaker, allow him to eat out our eyes and tear our skin for another 5 years. In 7 weeks, it will be 5 years. And the government, Mr. Speaker, in my view, has crucified the St. Lucian institutions, our pride, our good governance, and all significant parts of our country's soul. So I urge, Mr. Speaker, all patriotic St. Lucians, institutions, workers, faith-based organizations, St. Lucians living abroad, overseas, to raise your voices, become even more vigilant, so that this Prime Minister does not abuse his authority to attempt to delay the elections. Mr. Speaker, elections are due on or around June 6, 2021. And any attempt to delay by using the 3 months is an abuse of normal customs. This country, in my view, Mr. Speaker, I will say, is not the Prime Minister's supermarket, and it's not his real estate company. Call the elections.
I agree. If Chastney is so confident, just like Victor Eugene and others have said, call it. Call it. In the meantime, I want to make sure to put aside and put this to rest. This whole crap that Bradley always comes, the most innovative thing about him, that he constantly tries to pretend that he's not a politician, that he's not in league with Chastney and them, when everything about him is in league with them. And to the point where he has literally, in order to stay in power in the Choiseul-Saltibus constituency, he has given it up to both Guy Joseph and Pinkley so they can run roughshod and do whatever they want with it. And for him, as long as he's getting his campaign finance and his little election projects, it doesn't matter. But Bradley, I have some questions for you. I might wait till next week for me to drop them, because I know the answers to the questions before I ask them. But one of them is, how come, since when Choiseul-Saltibus, where in Jetwin, where in Londonderry or Guyabwa, where in the Choiseul village, where in Lafargue, you ever see Colombians before? And now all of a sudden, especially at a time when St. Lucians are desperate for work, somehow you have Colombians building your roads. Okay, but this clip is all about showing you just how much Bradley enjoys being one of the boys.
Mr. Speaker, in my constituency office, Mr. Speaker, I am flooded with requests for medical assistance. I see so many people doing fundraising activities because they cannot meet their medical bills, Mr. Speaker. What is this causing, Mr. Speaker? Depression in households. Mr. Speaker, this government, Mr. Speaker, has spent millions of dollars during the past 4 years, Mr. Speaker, providing medical assistance to people who are unable, and I'm sure the member for Central Castries will maybe be a little more pointed and give us the actual figure a little later. But let's compare figures. Yes, all governments do it. Let's compare the figure. Let's compare the figures. Mr. Speaker, 3 of the community's health centers in my community were retrofitted to be made more resilient centers. 3 of my community centers, namely Montgouge, Saltibus, and Lafargue. Mr. Speaker, I welcome, Mr. Speaker, what is being done to ensure that we have a world-class, and Mr. Speaker, I want to repeat that. I welcome what is being done to ensure we have a world-class hospital, not a Vieux-Fort class, not a St. Lucia class, but a world-class hospital at St. Jude's, Mr. Speaker. something, Mr. Speaker, that we can be proud of. This government has reduced VAT by 2.5%, Mr. Speaker. This government has waived property tax for 5 years, Mr. Speaker. This government, Mr. Speaker, has provided debt forgiveness on medical bills for senior citizens, Mr. Speaker. This government has subsidized flour by an additional $5, Mr. Speaker. This government has amended the Fiscal Incentive Act to benefit creative industries, ICT sector, professional services, spa and wellness. This government, Mr. Speaker, has provided, as I said, millions of dollars in medical assistance, Mr. Speaker. This government has provided 2,000 bags of rice, flour, and sugar to cushion the COVID impact when they provided it to NEMO, Mr. Speaker. This government has maintained a cap of $13.95 on gas despite volatility in oil prices, Mr. Speaker.
Yeah, the longer you spend around Shastny, the more you start to talk like him. The other day I come and say, resit back down. Yeah, man, it happens. It happens. It's just like when you make fun of people stuttering, you start to stammer too. Yeah. When you're around crooks, you become one. You enable them. There you have it. And just so it's said, folks, while Bradley boasts about something like the health centers in Morgouge and Saltibus and so on, that's a program that has been happening from since the time of Alvina Reynolds being the Minister for Health. And it's done not by the St. Lucian government, but by USAID, USAID. How are you? But let's get to the more full-throated one. I just wanted to establish for Bradley that a vote for Bradley is a vote for Shastny. A vote for King is a vote for Shastny. A vote for any of them is a vote for Shastny. And to continue the doctrine that has literally put St. Lucians on the endangered list in their own country. These guys don't just endorse it. They boast it. They love it. They extol it as a virtue. You want another one? Millie.
We have invested heavily in high-structured national sports infrastructure program for our youth and our sportsmen and women, Mr. Speaker. We have increased social assistance to the poor and our vulnerable groups. We are upgrading our Hiwanara International Airport to be a world-class airport to meet the challenges of the future. We have recorded pre-COVID, Mr. Speaker, record numbers in tourist arrivals. We have better equipped the police force, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, like I said earlier, we are on an eve of election, of a general election. And we have seen every election cycle, Mr. Speaker, the members opposite appear with a jingle. In 2011, it was jobs, jobs, jobs. Now, in 2011, it is putting you first. Mr. Speaker, I need to ask them whether they put the people first when they had a 16-to-1 mandate, because that surely could not be a better opportunity. Did they put the children of this country first, Mr. Speaker, when they allowed the school plan to depreciate and only spend $1 million a year on school infrastructure, Mr. Speaker? Did they put the people first, Mr. Speaker, when investors were written to and advised against investing in this country, Mr. Speaker? Did they put the minibus drivers, the taxi drivers, the commuters first when they allowed our road network to become this deplorable, Mr. Speaker? Did they put the people first, Mr. Speaker, at a time when there was no financial crisis, there was no drought, no hurricanes, there was no epidemic, and for sure, there was no COVID-19 pandemic when they took this country down to the doldrums, Mr. Speaker? Did they put the people first, Mr. Speaker, when they implemented VAT at a rate of 15% on their backs, the oppressive tax that they call it, Mr. Speaker? Did they put the people first, Mr. Speaker, when they put the 66% increase on water bills, Mr. Speaker? Did they put the people first, Mr. Speaker, when they placed the burden of avoidable debt from the countless cost overruns which they run, Mr. Speaker? Did they put the people first, Mr. Speaker, when they increased vehicle license fees? Mr. Speaker, in this election, every voter must make the right choice. That choice, Mr. Speaker, has never been clearer than ever before. This election, Mr. Speaker, is a decision as to whether you keep this country on the path of prosperity or return it to the dark days of the St. Lucia Labour Party. This election, Mr. Speaker, is a verdict as to whether we will allow a desperate opposition under the member for Castries East to take this country to the wilderness of fiscal infertility and economic turmoil, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker.
Funny, yeah. The boys club there, yeah, nice stuff. Now, one of the lies that they continuing to promulgate, and it's obvious they're going to the polls pushing this lie, just like they want to talk about the Labour Party march. They continue to say that they spend $10 million a year on schools, on school repairs. Folks, if they spend $10 million a year on school repairs, how come there has not been one single year of Gail Regobert's tenure as the worst Minister for Education in not having school repairs done in time before the opening of schools? Not one of the 5 years, not one, have the schools been refurbished or fixed in time. The fact of the matter is that there was a $2 million allocation under the Labour Party for the repair of schools per year. This government campaigned on it being too low. They came into office and they reduced it from $2 million to $900,000, less than half. And after 3 years, while our schools got worse and worse, more dilapidated, they were forced to spend more money on the schools. So the 1 year they raised it. After the 3rd year, they raised it and they said $10 million. But even that was a bluff, because what they did was they gave 200 of their hacks, including Champagne, Felix de Terville, to price gouge and to overbill and all Gail's relatives to do work in terms of the school repairs. They gave all their hacks, and all their hacks overbilled and underperformed. So after that, it compounded by having bad repairs done, like one of Gail's brothers that went and put a water tank that collapsed on a vehicle because he didn't put in the right amount of steel because he was too busy stealing. So what happened? Now, because of elections and time, they've had to double and triple the amount of money towards the end, just like what they're doing with everything else. It's like, think about this. If they're taking all this money in the worst year, 2020 going into 2021, to do all these road projects, the question you have to ask is, before COVID, where did all that money go to? Where did the gas tax money go to in terms of roads and all the rest? What happened? That said, I was in a bar about 3 weeks ago. I went down to Soufrière, and a gentleman, by the way, a shout out going out to Alvin Phillip, one of those who said that he put Herod in, so he'll be the one to take him out. So good afternoon to you, sir. And I was told that you can tell Herod's level of corruption by the size of his head. So I said, I just laughed. What do you say to that? So I'm busy laughing. And the man, very serious, people took out their phone, start showing me Herod's head in 2016. Herod's head now. Well, if it's that, Messi. Play the next clip.
Mr. Speaker, a response could have been formulated or fashioned long before the Prime Minister took to the podium. We almost knew beforehand what he was coming with and what he was about to say. Same old, same old, same old. Warm up from the refrigerator, which will better resonate in Creole if I were to say another serving of découché. Mr. Speaker, he said he was going to create a modern healthcare system. We'd heard that before. He said
that as a country we would be less dependent on fossil fuels. We heard that before. He said he was going to boost agriculture. And Mr. Speaker, he said that there would be the construction of hotels. But this time he was more careful. He did not promise the quantum that he would have promised previously. Mr. Speaker, after hearing the Prime Minister last night, should the banana farmers of this country be inspired? Did the utterances of the Prime Minister last night engender any kind of confidence in bus drivers, the nurses at the OKEU, the fisher folk, single mothers? Whom did he inspire with that budget address last night, Mr. Speaker? But I knew it was going to come to that, because this administration has wasted time, wasted 5 years, Mr. Speaker. And on the eve of elections, they have absolutely nothing to show after 5 years. 5 wasted years characterized by misguided priorities. And on the eve of election, Mr. Speaker, there is a scramble. There is a mad rush to complete projects. This will not work, Mr. Speaker. Failed promises. Where is the new St. Jude? Where are the bananas to France? Where are all the new hotels that we've been promised over a 5-year period? And where is the ching-ching in the pockets of St. Lucians, Mr. Speaker? Where is the new St. Lucia we were promised? Businesses are closing, and I know the easy retort is COVID. Crime is spiraling out of control. It will be difficult to attribute that to COVID.
Yep. Now, the problem with the House for me is that it's a relatively circular argument. There is never any true winner or true loser because, for example, Guy Joseph has literally been making the same speech for the last 15 years. Fire and brimstone, venom with the same old Rick Wayne recycled talking points. Lagan, the RDP one cost overrun. We don't have cost overrun. We just billing and giving direct award for 10 times the amount that the work will actually cost. And then he gets away with it, and you'll see them in Nervases, and the rest of them will come and Paul Ward and they say, boy, Guy Joseph, everything. So the circular argument can kind of wear thin on people, especially when they are feeling the effects of bad governance at an acute level. So I couldn't help, because I know scores of people, you have to consider yourself to be lucky, even if you're working at a loss or in work poverty, to at least have a job. In all of this, we cannot allow Shasney and them ignoring all of the unemployed people out there, all of those whose businesses have been crippled, all of those who have lost a year's worth of income and still counting because they do not know when Shasney will open up the economy, instead of, again, the same lopsided, or everything for the sake of tourism type of bullshit that he's been doing. And the question is, if this government really cared about the people, knowing that already going into the end of 2019, there was already record high unemployment. All of you tell them they brought down unemployment. The UWP brought down unemployment for 1 quarter of 1 year. And that is with the opening of Royalton, a Labour Party project, and Harbour Club, a Labour Party project as well. He killed construction, lost the range, stopped the Soufrière Square, stopped the administrative building in Vieux-Fort, and yet you will say he brought down unemployment. And then with COVID, having exploded unemployment and knowing that we're not going to be back to normal or even to the levels that we were in 2016 when he came in, for another 5 or so years at best, why didn't they take the time now in these last 9-10 months to develop any sort of unemployment benefit instead of a one-off?
If it is reserves, then we might well establish an unemployment fund that we've been talking about for the longest while. Because if the NIC is sitting on $80 or $100 million that it can afford to give away on short-term notice, then the unemployment fund that we have been debating and have not had the fortitude or forthrightness to establish all these many years, then we could establish it tomorrow. Because what we are talking about here today is an unemployment benefit. So instead of creating an economic disaster fund, or whatever we propose to call it, create the unemployment benefit, because that is what you are trying to achieve. What is this roundabout mechanism when you can go directly to just add another category of benefit to the existing benefits which are already in the legislation? It would be so much simpler, so much more translucent, so much easier to manage. You just add another benefit called an unemployment benefit. You allocate a percentage of your resources to that benefit, and it becomes part of the standard operations of the NIC, and not some exceptional mechanism to be invoked when, if, or not. That is what our problem is. We have thousands of people who are unemployed or who have lost a significant proportion of their income.
I agree with Independent Senator Dr. Adrian Auger. I also agree with former Senator Everestus Jamari in his assessment of Shasney's budget presentation.
Prime Minister Alan Shasney delivered the 2021-2022 budget under the theme Adapting, Overcoming and Persevering. Local businessman and political commentator Everestus Jamari says while the budget was delivered with gusto, the content was lacking. Genevieve Gonzague reports.
There is no doubt that the COVID-19 pandemic has affected St. Lucia to a great magnitude, and the effects will be felt long after the virus is under control. On Tuesday, Prime Minister Alan Shasney presented the budget address for the financial year 2021-2022 under the theme Adapting, Overcoming and Persevering, despite the challenges brought on by COVID-19. The 4-hour address sought to explain the policy agenda of the current administration and to provide the rationale and framework which underpins the expenditure programs to be implemented in the financial year. Local businessman and former independent senator Everestus Jamari says the presentation had very little substance.
I have to say he delivered it with a lot of gusto and enthusiasm, but while I say it would be long on style, it was very short on substance. In that, after it all, you sat back and think, okay, what is the takeaway from this budget presentation? And I couldn't really put my hands on anything tangible that came out of this budget. It is very much lacking, I think, in substance.
Mr. Speaker, having established the raison d'etre for this government's infrastructure program, as well as the installation of water and electricity supply networks, we'll continue to ensure that we have a cadre of healthcare personnel, which is for the tax regime, to some semblance of normalcy. Experiencing resurgences. Mr. Speaker, as a direct in the post-pandemic area, neglect that comprise connectivity to the hybrid of virtual and face-to-face elements would enable us to do just that.
There were many instances when he was not leading the battle from the front.
A lot of what he said was against the backdrop of the challenges of COVID, the COVID pandemic, and still many people have not received income support while we borrowed money for that purpose. A lot of people remained, in a very difficult situation. There's a lot of hurt, poverty, people are struggling, and they haven't received the income support that they should have received. So generally, in terms of his delivery, I think generally he did deliver with a certain level of excitement and confidence, but that's what he's good at. But in terms of substance, very little.
Shasney gave yet another nothing burger. That's what the budget was. A budget, just shit throwing out. If you get from it, if you take from it, whatever you get, it had nothing but shit, because at the end of the day, now, if ever there was a time you needed to do something substantive. But you see, Shasney has one play in the playbook. That is it right now. It is from the Willie Lynch mantra, and it is what forms the core of elitism, exploitation. And that is to starve a man until he is grateful to be fed by the same man that starved him.
Now, Mr. Alan Shasney in Hospital Road, Castries, better known as Palacio. He pulled up there with his 7 Series. Yeah, as you could see right now, You know, he got cops around him, the goons around him. Yeah. So right now he's giving contract. He's giving contract all around the place. Mr. Alan Chasley. And he told us to Joyce face and that rubbish bin. Yeah. What you want eat mango? Me?
Now if the guy has him, and we can open the lines now, 5727588 and 484758. That's for our show this morning, right now, happening today. Shasney there. A couple of things. The guy, if it's him or he has weed, you notice Shasney, I care about that right now. Now, second of all, if Shasney is going to commission putting his face on the side of a garbage receptacle, I genuinely believe it should be done. I am willing to put at least $100 for them to paint Shasney's face on every garbage dump around St. Lucia. Please, I think it's a brilliant idea. And now he's giving contracts, now he's out there buying drinks, now he's giving handouts of cash. And the vehicle that is being used there is the vehicle of the Governor General. And I already know that that same vehicle was used to pick up the Prime Minister's wife and was used to pick up other people like Tewa King, when the truth is that vehicle is reserved for the head of state. Not even the Prime Minister is supposed to be using the Governor General's dedicated vehicle. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Chris.
Good afternoon, sir.
Chris, I want to go back to this ITEL BPO clip that you played.
Yes, for sure.
Chris, let me tell you what is going to happen. And I'm going to link it to the vaccination registration program based on what some people are, saying. Some people from the Babono and the Mikud North constituencies.
Yes.
Chris, we know hundreds of young people applied for those positions at ITEL BPO. We know that not even half of those people were employed. And as you pointed out, those people, what is not being said is even if they employ 300, they employ 400, but as time goes by, hundreds of those people are being let go.
Yes.
Now, here's what is going to happen. Elections are around the corner. Guess what? This government already has the information, the contact information of all of those people.
Yep.
What they'll do is they're going to call, if they haven't started doing that yet, call them up and say, look, boy, we know that things are tough right now, and so on. ITEL, BPO, and OJO couldn't take all of you, and so on. But after the elections, we'll make sure that you people are going to get employment.
That is already, and I know, that is already happening. And also, those who are working, just like those who went to put their names down to register for vaccine, they're calling them and telling them, vote for us or these programs will be discontinued. There is no point or impetus for the Labour Party to stop these call centers. What is important, though, is to make sure that the terms and conditions are exposed, and if you see it is egregious, that you put certain things to a halt.
Exactly. And here is the link to the vaccination registration program. The same thing, Chris, that is now being done with these ITEL BPO people, based on what people from Mikud North and Babono are saying, when people register for the vaccination, their information, their contact information is being used to call them up and to ask them to vote for the UWP candidates in those constituencies. Christopher, this is nothing short of criminal. Nothing short of criminal.
But are you surprised? Were you surprised?
No. No.
So you're not surprised? You're not surprised that we have a government that acts in criminal fashions?
Exactly.
Neither am I.
Because what we have in office, there are thugs, goons. We don't have people representing St. Lucia or St. Lucians. We have a bunch of thugs, a cabal of goons in office. I've said that before, and I'll continue to say it, because those people do not represent our interests. They represent the interests of their friends, their family, and select foreigners. And they show that day after day after day. I mean, Harold Stanislaus, stands up in the Parliament. And the same thing you mentioned earlier, Chris. Every time I see that guy on television, I cannot help but remark on the size of that guy's head.
Let me tell you, I'll be honest.
Because
let me tell you.
To me that the type of money that he's making hand over fist is going to his head. So it's making his head bigger and bigger and bigger.
Well, I can only tell you, if anybody ever said that he's a swell-headed guy, you can't argue. You can't argue.
Thanks, Chris.
Thank you, caller. Thank you. But I'll tell you, I'm telling you, I was in the bar in Soufrière, and the fellas telling you that they can tell. There are fellas that tell they know Herod as a friend. They know from the time, if the amount of money, whatever amount of money, if it's the construction company, if it's the land that he acquired, if it's the land that been transferred, if it's the yachts, if it's the contracts, if it's the mothers and fathers restaurant that all taxi drivers have to pay homage by bringing their fares over there. Boy, for real, man. May say. That is what, if you see, I don't want to ask Mate a question because if Mate nod, he might hit me. I mean, wow. Yes, good afternoon, caller.
Good afternoon, Christo. How are you?
I'm all right. What's up with you?
That's your partner. Oh, I couldn't easy as the wind blows. Let me tell you that. I saw, I think Trisha that played the clip, or I think you played too. A police trying to arrest a man, want to beat the man. For
not wearing a mask.
Mask.
Yep.
Yeah. That's in Rodney Bay area.
Yes, JQ Mall side there, yes, last night.
I was asking that same police officers whether they wasn't in the valley when they saw when Chasney didn't have no mask and others had no mask. Now he himself didn't have any mask.
But caller, I'm going to tell you something, and I think it should be a public announcement. Anybody that does not want to get any attention from the COVID wardens, they should just wear yellow. Just wear a UWP shirt, and the police will never come behind you. Never. The COVID wardens will never come.
That's a good thing, man. Oh, that's brilliant. So let me tell you that. You see, Pick Me Francis, Met always have been a dangerous and dirty fella from the time he was in Kiblan Wireless. And I'm calling on Mr. Philip J. Pierre, including Pick Me Francis. When Labour Party come into power, you have to resign. But at the end of the day, I'm telling Mr. Philip J. Pierre, fellas like Net have to face the courts. One, because there are too many laws where England is concerned, where they can use them laws, which is part of St. Lucia, where they can amend the laws and do what needs to be done. The same laws they themselves pass. They can amend these laws, backdate it, and deal with their own selves by wasting St. Lucian's money. Now,
agreed.
Where I can go, I will further tell Mr. Philip J. Pierre, there's a statement he'll have to make whenever, as soon as he wins the election, but I will not make that statement on the air for him to know what he has to say. I will call his office and tell him, record it, when I call him and record it, and then he'll be able to say what he has to say as soon as he gets from 9 to 10 seats going up. Immediately, you have to do that, or the following day. Good.
Thank you, caller.
Because what's going on in St. Lucia, not even the devil want to take part in it. Because the devil is just satisfied with to a certain limit. So his goal gone, that's it. He don't want nothing much more. So not even devil want to see these fellas. And anybody who call themselves St. Lucian, they love the state, they love the country, and you're supporting Aaron Chasney, think twice, 3 times, 4 times to go and vote for Met again. If it's for 50 pieces of silver, you're doing that, it will not lead you nowhere. Like people like, what's his name again? Milton Daisy. I'll be sorry for you when Labour Party wins, because you're in a state of where you have to resign immediately. Because that's how I look at Milton Daisy to do.
Thank you, caller.
We don't have no choice.
Not to cut you short, but thank you. We have to try and get another.
No problem.
Thank you very much.
No problem, my friend. Take it easy.
Yep. Well, everybody's presupposing that it's going to be a fair election. My question to you all is, what about this government tells you or suggests to you that anything about them will be free and fair? Folks, it will take a 16-1 majority to get 9-8. That's what I genuinely believe. They will stuff ballot boxes, bribe officials, turn the other way when the people are being bought, or whatever they have to do, they will do. Because even though they've stolen everything that was for you, from you, and for the country, the truth is they have leadership that extols that. Greed is a virtue in this government. Right? Anybody that's not thieving is looked at as a fool. So the fact of the matter is, when it comes to the election there now, we have to fight for a free and fair election. The price will be vigilance. You notice how the rules apply to some and not to others? That's what's happening in St. Lucia. So it's up to you. It's up to you. And like I've said, if it's just about the red versus yellow, then the UWP, I don't even call that the UWP, Shastney and them will win. They'll work it out. They'll use their Cambridge. They'll do whatever. If it is about right versus wrong, then St. Lucia and St. Lucians will win. Good afternoon, caller.
Hello?
Yes, caller?
Yes, Chris.
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Chris?
Yes?
Yeah, what I want to... yes, Chris.
Caller, turn down your device and speak because you're listening to your echo and my echo.
Yeah, what I want to ask is, I hear the mayor say they fire the guy, and yet they don't get the gun. So I wonder what kind of thing going on. Because you cannot fire somebody, and yet you can't get the gun. When they ask him about where the gun is, he say they can't get the gun. That guy was supposed to be in the station. The police supposed to arrest that guy.
Caller, when it comes to that particular thing, just like a lot of things when it comes to the CCC, you know things not adding up. You know they have COPLO. But the problem is to prove it, because unlike the rest of government that you get central government where there are documents and so on, the CCC operates on its own to an extent.
Yeah, because I seen the man say he fired the guy, yet he can't get the guy. Okay, my brother.
Thank you, caller. Thank you very much. Well, folks, I think I'm out of time, but I wanted to make sure to let people know and to reiterate that the time will soon be at hand. You can see everything shaping up. This government knows that it's in trouble, so they will use every sinister means. And like I said, it's not about the Labour Party being the greatest thing or the UWP of days old. This is a special circumstance. Every election, just like Herod and them said there, is the most important election. I've said it before. This election is like with the Avengers, right? In the sense that what's already happened, the most consequential election already happened in 2016. We rolled the dice, we gambled, and we lost. Now we are trying to rescue the country. The last election was the most important. This one is for the fait accompli. If we vote for the failed state that is the Pearl of the Caribbean, the bourgeois enclave, that quote-unquote new St. Lucia, not a better St. Lucia, the new means that everything existing now is up for auction, privatization, liquidation, or destruction. That includes you. But if you're going to vote for your country is the Helen of the West Indies, and you don't need a new St. Lucia, you want a better St. Lucia, well, the first thing you have to do is stop the bleeding, stop the hemorrhaging. And that means that you have to vote right versus wrong, not necessarily red or yellow in terms of what's in the front of your mind. This election will be a referendum on our collective conscience. Are we all sellouts and house slaves, or are we proud St. Lucians that can never be bought? That is what's up for grabs. In the meantime, I agree. To the vendors, I say, our day will come.
We have a great leader
I think St. Lucian have not seen the best of the Prime Minister. I mean, he's an inspiration to me.
People believe that the solution to the problems that we have in St. Lucia only rests with the government.
I don't believe anybody believes that.
Hold on a second.
Well, you mustn't.
We going back. No. When then you have to
there
allow
are
me.
people in St. Lucia. I must stop you.
The classic problem in St. Lucia is what I describe, and I try to get people to see it from that perspective, is this Malawi syndrome we have in St. Lucia. That everybody is so unfortunate that we have to accept the denier de the least common denominator for us to get by. Oh man, the man want to make a bread, man.
The vendor coordinator at the Castries City Council says the CCC is running out of options when it comes to getting vendors to adhere to rules and protocols in the market. He says the CCC has put its foot down and there should be absolutely no vending in trolleys on weekdays. But at the same time, he says the CCC is exasperated with the back and forth with vendors and farmers.
Market vendors, farmers, and the CCC are constantly at loggerheads when it comes to the newly placed rules for the provisions market. The latest feud between vendors and the CCC was as a result of farmers and vendors being asked to stop vending in front of the marketing board as well as Dealey's supermarket, but rather in the spot which was previously used by provision vendors. The vendor coordinator of the CCC, Augustine Victor, says they are at wit's end as they have tried all measures possible to ensure there is some semblance of protocol adherence by vendors. However, that continues to be futile.
We are going to lay our hands down. If the people dissatisfied with a lot of vendors over there and farmers, they are the one now who have to come and start making noise to the media.
You know what happened? Things will take a turn. Trust me, it will take a turn.
That day will come when I stand and see all those wicked men in the fun. That day will come when they will try to escape and there will be nowhere to run.
The Prime Minister, I mean, he's an inspiration to me, and people realize that I've run the CCC and what he believe in.
A massa mentality.
The election round the corner. I'm a diet flubbo. I will not vote for them this year. I will not do it.
The opinions expressed on this TV program by the host, co-host, guest, and call-in listeners or chatters are solely the opinions and responsibility of the original source who expressed them. They do not necessarily represent the opinions of UTV or its affiliates.